Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Ema Roloff, and I have Jason with me here today. And we're going to be talking about how the general public can be using AI to really improve their lives. But before I get into the questions that I've got for you, Jason, can you give everybody an introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Emma. So I'm Jason. I'm the co-founder of Other Side AI. We started the company about 2 years ago after seeing the recent improvements in AI, specifically large-scale language models. We had GPT-3 and other models, and we knew that these were going to play a huge role in how people do their work, how they live their lives. We saw this shift, and we knew we had to start something. So over the past 2 years, we've been focusing on how can we learn about how users and humans and people interact with AI and build specifically writing and communication tools. Every day is a little bit different, but it all contributes to how can we build these AI powered tools and get them into the hands of as many people as possible.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me. And what I want to start with is a little bit of a broad facing question, talking about where are people using AI today that maybe they don't even realize it?
Yeah, totally. So there are a few different things, and maybe you realize it, maybe you don't. One of the places I always love to start is the algorithm, right? The infamous algorithm, whether you're scrolling on TikTok or you're on LinkedIn or Instagram, and it's deciding what content you're seeing when. You always know you're interacting with some sort of algorithm. It's personalized to you, right? So that's a form of AI that you're interacting with. It's there, but I like to say that you're sort of passively interacting with it, right? You don't really have control over it, but you know that it's there and it's bringing you some sort of value. A few other places where you might be interacting with it that people are familiar with. Let's talk about like chatbots and things like that. When chatbots started, they were very rules based, right? They had a few distinct paths, and based on the answer, maybe you just clicked a yes or no, or you chose from a few different options, it would run you in that direction and follow a path. And then slowly over time, they've become a bit more flexible, right? I can actually type in a response, and based on some of the language that I'm using in there, it'll decide which path to go down. So those are two places that I like to start with, right? We have you're passively interacting, it's there, it's this complicated algorithm, and then it's this rules-based AI that you're interacting with, maybe in a chat bot. And that kind of leads to where we're going with this conversation and where we are today. And we're starting to see that the really powerful AI that you used to only passively interact with is now being brought into the fold, where things used to be rule based or used to not have as much flexibility or couldn't be as creative. We're starting to see some of that being used in these new use cases.
And you gave me a perfect segue then to move into this conversation. So, what has happened in the world of AI, and what advancements have we seen that have allowed us to start pulling that more complex type processing into ways that we create, and ways you mentioned the idea of enhancing our writing skills? What's
Yeah.
really enabled that shift over the last couple of years?
It's essentially as these technologies have improved, the models have become bigger and more capable, right? We can train models at a faster rate on much more data instead of just training let's talk about a language model. Instead of just training a language model on a few hundred articles or a few thousand web pages, we're now able to train models on billions and billions of parameters, the entire internet. So a really great example of this that our company uses, that a lot of people might be familiar with or have heard a little bit about, is GPT-3 from OpenAI. OpenAI has been working on this for a while, right? They had GPT, then they had GPT-2. About 2 years ago, GPT-3 came out, and there'll be additional models that come down the line. Each subsequent model was trained on more parameters, and which just allows it to have a greater knowledge of different topics, and thus a greater ability to then generate content, generate writing, like you mentioned, on these different topics. The technology has been improving. It's becoming more accessible. Related to this, we have things like GBTJ, which is now open source that anyone can get access to. We're seeing similar things happen with text to image models like Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, which is also from OpenAI. So it's really just the size of these models are improving. They're becoming more accessible to people who aren't as technical, and that's allowing them to be used in these really new, unique ways.
I think one key part that you just brought up there is that idea of these tools becoming open source and readily available to people. I
Yeah,
know in other interviews that I've done specifically focused on computer vision and that type of thing, a lot of the work that Intel has been doing over the years, those models were open source and now are being leveraged into specific use cases all over the place. And I've done a couple of different interviews with people that are using those same underlying technologies to be able to drive their own individual products forward. So it's like that shared knowledge is really starting to take off and take us to new heights, which is a really cool thing to see.
totally. And I think one of the interesting things about open source is there's kind of trade-offs, right? Open source is great, but it also means that when these large models become accessible to anyone, that also exposes some of the potential issues and biases in the models when they're not maybe as down or not as of, there's no organization or company overseeing that they're being used in safe ways. So that's something that I think about often, which is I love open source. Open source is great. It provides all these opportunities, but it's becoming, and maybe this is the pessimist in me, but it makes it easier for a bad actor or someone with who doesn't have the best intentions to use these to support whatever their motives is. But generally a great thing for the world.
Well, and that's another conversation for a different time, but that ethical use of AI is something that we do have to pay attention to and be thoughtful with as we're rolling out these technologies and bringing them and developing them so intertwined with our life and the way that we live, which is another good segue for me to come to this last question for you.
Yeah.
As we take a look at these tools improving, what are ways that people could start using AI to improve their own personal workflows or their own personal creative skills, so to speak, as we look to the future?
Totally. So I'll focus on writing first because that's the space that we're playing in mostly these days. And we've seen a lot of really incredible things happening there. So my company, Other Side AI, is creating Hyper, which is an AI writing assistant that can do a few different things. It can help you finish your sentence when you get stuck. You can press a button, it can just write the next paragraph of the blog post or anything that you're writing. You can highlight a sentence and get it rewritten, transform the tone, make it shorter, make it longer, make it more formal. So that's something that we are building. And then within this writing space, there are so many other players. So work in this general writing space, but if you go more specific, I think marketing is one of the use cases that we've really seen lately. I'm sure folks are familiar with Jasper and or Copy AI, which are really leaders in this marketing space and are doing some great work, allowing folks to create these first drafts, create their copy, transform the social content that they're making, and really just improve their workflows. I think a lot of people are coming around on the fact that it's not just AI or robots doing our jobs, but it's AI and technology that can enhance the work that we're doing and allow us to do, whether we're a marketer or we're writing copy, to produce better content and more, right? So it's enabling us to do more rather than taking things away from us. We also have things like the text to image, like I was talking about, some really cool things happening there. If you were to just search text to image AI, tons of things would come up. That's something that we've built in. Facebook is working on text to video. Things as simple as when I'm making a video and recording it, I can get an automatic transcription and then I can query that and ask questions. I can get subtitles automatically created. So I really like to focus on how it's just enabling us to do so much more.
I think that idea of like augmentation as opposed to replacing is something that I talk a lot about just in the broader sphere of digital transformation, because I think a
Yeah,
lot of times the media portrays the use of technology as something that's going to take over or eliminate humans and reduce jobs and all the rest of it, but it's actually creating a lot of opportunity for everybody. And if we, again, purposefully shape the way that we're using these technologies, we can do it in a really positive way for society.
totally. I think new things and new technologies that we don't know a lot about, especially, can be scary. But if we learn how to use them and we're open to it, they can really open up a lot of opportunity. I know, like, I have academics, right, at universities reaching out, asking how this is going to change how education works. And it's really interesting. There are folks on all sides. There are the folks that are saying this is going to ruin education, ruin the world. And then there are folks that say, wow, this can really enhance the work that my students are doing. These are the tools that they're going to use when they enter the workforce. they should probably be learning how to use them in school. So I think it's really the people that are embracing that and open to that change and want to learn more that are really going to be ahead of the curve moving forward.
Thank you so much for joining me, Jason. And for anybody that's not, make sure you make your way over to his LinkedIn and give him a follow. He is a fellow LinkedIn Accelerator member with me as a part of that cohort of 120 folks, all focused on technology and innovation. There will be a lot of content for you to follow along and support with as well. But thank you so much, Jason, for joining me, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Leading Change. If you liked what you saw, be sure to subscribe and come back weekly for more expert interviews on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.